We're live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our healthy cooking / healthy eating on budget spring cooking class for the 2021 seniors. Congratulations, by the way. That's awesome. Things are very different this year. A lot of things out of our control. Rachel and Jenna reached out to dining services. Rich Byrne, our director, and asked if there was anything we could do special for you guys. And so we came up with this concept. It turned into an in-person event, which I'm glad about because this is a lot more relaxing for me than having a bunch of cameras in my face from media services. So I'm pretty happy about having you here. So my name is Sean Kelsey. I've been dining services manager here at MHC for the last 2 years, and I just recently got promoted to assistant director of culinary operations, which I'm really excited about. Really happy to be a part of this community within that capacity, and I plan to be here a very long time. I've been working in kitchens for more than 25 years. I'm passionate about sustainability, local purchasing, and healthy cooking. Our food system in this world, and especially in this country, is broken right now, and something has to be done about it. So when we talk about eating healthy, that leads right into that, right? Because if you're eating more of a plant-based diet, adding more of that into your diet, then you're making an impact on the broken food system right there, then and there. I really see you as the next generation of leaders that's going to go out into this world, the next generation of politicians that can go out there and make a difference. So although dining services is not part of your academic experience here at MHC, we are part of your college experience, right? So if we can impart some of the ideas of sustainability, healthy eating, and those types of things as you go out into the world, maybe you can make a bigger difference and help change things. So that's what I'm passionate about, and that's why I'm really excited to have you here today. I want to make it clear that everybody has specific dietary needs. I am not a dietitian. I'm just a cook. I've been cooking for a long time, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy sharing my knowledge. But if you have specific dietary needs, make sure you visit a registered dietitian for that fact. What we're going to do today is just cover some ingredients and a couple of techniques, a couple simple things you can do at home that is going to be healthy, and also do it on a budget. So the premise behind this class is you're going to graduate, you're going to go get an apartment somewhere, you're going to get a job, you're going to be on your own, and you're going to be broke. Because you're going to have student loans and bills and all these things that you're going to have to manage that you've never had to manage before. So having a few ideas of what to do at home to cook, just a couple of tips and tricks. This is going to be just a short class. We're going to try to have some fun. You're going to smell some smells, taste some tastes. That's what these platters are in front of you here. There's some herbs and spices, some oil and some vinegar there. If you're adventurous enough, please smell some of the spices. There's a couple of things you can taste: the vinegar, the olive oil. If you're really adventurous and you want to taste the spicy things like the sambal and the chile de árbol, please do so. And I'll kind of give you an idea of when to do that when I'm cooking. When you're smelling the herbs and spices, don't bury your nose in the cup because you might get a big whiffle of it and you don't want to be choking on this stuff. Just kind of brush it towards your nose. And we are going to do some cooking, so there'll be some smells that you'll get from the cooking process, which is going to be kind of cool. That's why we set it up this way. So although the true way to achieve healthy cooking is to make everything at home, right? Make everything from scratch. That's impossible. We're all busy. We have families. We have activities going on. We have work. We have study. We have school. We have all this stuff going on. So you're going to have to buy stuff from the grocery store every once in a while. So the first thing I want to touch bases on, and I don't know how widely known this is. Maybe everybody knows this. But I want to talk about ingredient labels really quick. There's a lot of marketing that goes into things. You got to be wary when you're in the grocery store. Make sure you're reading your ingredient labels. You're going to hear things like fat-free. You're going to hear things like organic, gluten-free. This is all marketing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you. Again, everybody has specific dietary needs. So make sure you're reading the ingredient labels. If you read an ingredient label, the way it works is the first thing that's listed is what there's the most of. The last thing that's listed is what there's the least of. You pick up a fat-free dressing, the first ingredient is water. So there's more water in this than anything else. The dressing companies want to sell you water because it's cheap, right? Second ingredient is sugar. So it's a fat-free dressing that's made out of water and sugar. Then there's some vinegar, then there's some honey, then there's some mustard. So those are the honey, mustard, and vinegar are the three ingredients that should be in your vinaigrette. They should be the first ingredients, in my opinion. So again, yeah, it's fat-free, but just always read the label so that you understand what you're eating. There's a lot of marketing that goes in, and it's tricky. So you got to do your research a little bit. Just take the time to read those labels when you're shopping. One thing I wanted to touch on that's becoming a huge issue, and food waste is a big problem in this world, and especially in this country, right? Be conscientious of your Best By dates when you're at home. This is going to save you money. It's going to give you an opportunity to maybe eat something or utilize something that's not bad. The food companies put Best By dates on just about everything, and it's not always accurate. I'm not saying that if something looks weird or smells weird to just go ahead and eat it. That's not what I'm saying by any means. But if you have like a cheese stick, like a string cheese that's in the thing, and it says Best By, and it's a week old, don't just throw it away. Open it up. Cheese is one of those things that is better as it ages, right? So if you have a cheese stick that's past its Best By date, it should have costed you more money because now it's a little bit more aged, maybe, right? So just have that thought process in your head when you're in your refrigerator and you're trying to utilize everything that you buy. That's part of what you're going to have to do if you're going to try to eat healthy on a budget. Is you're going to have to utilize everything you buy, right? Throwing things away that you buy is the worst way to save money and to eat healthy. So I'll go in now, I guess, into just a couple of little tips and tricks. When you're cooking at home, you're going to have a cutting board. You're going to always want to take that cutting board and you're going to want to stabilize it. A lot of people I see cooking, they got their cutting board on the counter and it's moving around on them and it's shaking, and that's just so dangerous. So here's a little tip that I use. You can just run this under warm water under your sink. Put a towel underneath your cutting board on your counter, and then put your cutting board over that towel centered. Now it won't move on you at all. So it's a nice stable surface, right? Next thing I'll talk about is having a chef's knife at home. An 8-inch chef's knife is probably the best tool to have in the kitchen. This is a 10-inch chef's knife because I'm using it in more of an industrial style kitchen where I'm doing more at once. This chef's knife, this 8-inch chef's knife is perfect for home. Always keep it nice and sharp. A sharper knife is actually safer than a duller knife. You guys know why? A duller knife, you have to apply more pressure. And when you're applying more pressure to get it through something, when it slips, it's more damaging. When you have a nice sharp knife, you don't have to apply a lot of pressure. So as long as you're paying attention to what you're doing, you're keeping your fingers safe, and you're moving through that product, it's going to be safer because you're not applying a ton of pressure on it, right? You see a lot of these in kitchens. This is called a sharpening steel. It doesn't actually sharpen a knife. Once your knife is dull, it's dull. The steel will do nothing for it. This will keep it sharper longer. So if you have a sharp knife, running it along that steel very gently every once in a while is going to help get the little burrs off the microscopic edge. Actually, in one direction or another, what you're doing is you're straightening it out by running it down the steel. You'll keep your knife sharp longer if you use your steel on a regular basis. But once your knife's dull, don't sit there and crank on your steel in your kitchen. You see a lot of people putting all their might into it. It's not doing anything. At that time, it's going to require a sharpening stone to get it sharp. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. When you're using a chef's knife, the way you want to hold it is take your two pincher fingers and put them right on the blade, and then your other 3 fingers wrap around the handle. A lot of people will try to use the chef's knife from back here, holding their whole hand on it. It doesn't work that way. You want to pinch the blade, wrap those 3 fingers around, and then the tip of the chef's knife always goes on the cutting board. So you're sort of doing this motion. You want to practice this motion. The tip of the chef's knife never leaves the cutting board. That's everything that goes underneath that part is what's getting cut, and that's how you gain control of it. It's a movement like this. And when you start doing this, you want to do it very slowly, and don't worry about speed. Worry about accuracy and timing, and just go nice and slow. And then as you get better, that's when the speed will come. That's when you can be, top chef over there knocking vegetables out left and right. Be really fast on the cutting board. The shape of your hand is always like this. Put your fingers straight down, and the thumb goes behind the fingers. And then you use your fingers as a guide. So the thumb never comes out in front of your fingers. If it does, I could take my glove off and show you what happens when you do that, right? When I was a young cook, in a hurry, and I almost chopped the tip of my thumb off. So always make sure that thumb's tucked behind your fingers. And then that'll just give you, after time and practice, it'll become a natural movement. And you won't even have to think about it. Another thing I want to talk about is anytime you're cooking, take the extra steps for sanitation. Make sure you're taking the time to wipe your counters down. You can use a multi-purpose cleaner. Anytime you're using a cutting board, make sure you wipe that down. When you go from one ingredient, especially raw meat, to a vegetable or any other type of product from a raw meat, you want to make sure that that cutting board gets washed and sanitized. So at home, the best way to do it is to just put it in your sink, get some dish soap on it, scrub it down really good, dry it off, get it back on your cutting board. Slows you down a little bit, but sanitation is paramount in cooking, right? You don't want to get, especially in a situation we're in where we're feeding, when we're at normal capacity doing 6,000 meals a day, if we make a mistake and get a lot of people sick, that's just a terrible travesty. You don't want to get sick at home either, right? So very important when you're doing that. So let's move into a couple of our ingredients that we have laid out here today. I think if you're talking about healthy eating on a budget, you have to touch bases on whole grains. Whole grains are incredibly important in a diet, a healthy diet. And they're also fairly inexpensive. So something you can have as a staple product in your pantry and also in your refrigerator as a prepared item. Whole grains, low nutrients, generally inexpensive. Refined grains, like when you talk about like white rice or basmati rice, jasmine rice, those things are all still really good for you. Don't avoid them by any means. That's a good thing to have in your diet. But also, they're really good for you, but they're not as good for you as a whole grain, right? Which your whole grain brown rice. You hear a lot about whole wheat pasta, whole wheat bread. Whole grains are incredibly important for you. Basically, a whole grain is a whole seed, which is sort of a simplest way to explain it, right? It's the whole seed of a plant is what a whole grain is. And it has three parts. It has the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. Those are the three parts of the seed that are on there, as opposed to a refined where parts of those are removed. There's tons of nutrients in those parts that get removed in the refining process. You hear processed foods. That's sort of the root of some of that, is as things are further processed, they have less nutrients in them. They are less expensive for that reason. Whole grains are packed with nutrients. So whole grains are rice, wheat, barley, oats. Whole grains are packed with nutrients. They've got protein, they've got fiber, they've got B vitamins, antioxidants, lots of trace minerals, iron, zinc, copper, all of the things that your body needs to be healthy. Whole grains have been proven to reduce the risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and some forms of cancer. You're going to see a theme in a lot of this, and I'm going to try to tie it all in a basic sense. Again, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a culinary instructor, but I do know how I feel when I eat healthy, and how eating a more plant-based diet makes me feel, and how I perform, how I operate on a daily basis. You're going to go out into this world, have demanding jobs, have high-stress jobs, things like that. The healthier you eat, the better you will be at performing. So those two things line up. Quinoa is a great whole grain. It tends to be on a little bit more of the expensive side. That's why I didn't really talk too much about it in this class. You can obviously always add quinoa into your diet, but compared to a lot of your rices and your other grains, it's going to be a lot more expensive. Getting back to oats, this right here is a steel cut oat. So a whole grain oat takes forever to cook because it has to break down that really thick hull on the outside in the cooking process. And then you go from a whole grain oat to a steel cut oat, which is basically they kind of cut them on the bias, which makes them cook up faster because the moisture is allowed to get inside the grain and cook from there. Then you go to rolled oats, which is another really good oat to eat, and that cooks a little bit quicker than the steel cut and quicker than the whole grain oat. And then you start getting into your further processed oats, your instant oatmeals, your things like that, which are still good for you, but they're not as good for you as those first two steps before they get further refined. Further parts of the oat is taken away, so that's how it cooks faster. There's still a lot of nutrients in it, but they're removing nutrients in order to make it cook faster. So that's really the essence of a whole grain, is you're getting everything from that seed when you eat it instead of just parts of that seed. Another grain I have here in front of me, I have some brown rice here, and again, that's rice that hasn't been altered in any way. You're getting everything off of that rice. This is farro. Farro is an ancient grain. This is a real popular movement right now, and I think you'll hear in marketing a lot about ancient grains. Ancient grains are essentially forms of wheat, cereals, and pseudo-cereals that have not been mass-produced. They have not been genetically modified. They were sort of lost in history. People lost interest in them other than in the regions they were being eaten in directly. A lot of these are from the Middle East, different parts of the country. Quinoa is from South America, in the high mountains of the Andes, in Peru. It sort of stayed in those regions and just never got popular outside that, so they were never mass-produced or changed in any way. So a lot of their original essence of what they are naturally is still there. So that's why they're so good for you. They do tend to be a little bit more expensive because it's a newer thing and it's just becoming popular. But just look for those types of grains: farro, freekeh, amaranth. Those are fun things to just add into your diet on a little bit of a basis. You can steam this up and make a salad out of it, add a vinaigrette, add vegetables to it. You can almost do like a farro risotto. Lots of fun things you can do with grains, just getting a little bit creative. I think one of the themes that I really want to stress upon you today is that cooking's a lifelong journey. I've been cooking professionally for 25 years, and I learn new things every single day. And if I'm still cooking when I'm 80, I'll still be learning new things every day. Cooking is such a humongous aspect, and it's such a huge concept that's so differently all over the world with different ingredients. You can never learn it all. There's just no way to learn it all. It's like a hobby like golf. You could spend a few years getting pretty good at it, but you'll spend the rest of your life mastering it. You'll never know it all. So be adventurous, have fun with cooking, try new things, and that's how you'll get good, and you'll find new flavors, and you'll find new things that you enjoy by just being a little bit brave. And it'll save you money at times, and I'll show you how you do that. Next thing I wanted to touch bases on are legumes. Legumes are incredibly inexpensive. A bag of lentils like this is about $1. It's about 99 cents for a bag of lentils, maybe $1.25. You get the 10 for 10 deals at Big Y. Pinto beans, black beans, white beans, red beans. There are probably, there are several different varieties of lentils, all of which are incredibly good for you. They're high in protein, high in fiber, loaded with nutrients, and they're incredibly good for your gut. You're going to hear me talk about the gut and the microbiome through this presentation. There's a lot of new studies that are showing that a long, healthy life is lived through eating a diverse plant-based diet, and it has a lot to do with feeding your gut the bacteria that live in your gut. It's a huge part of keeping all of the things that will eventually lead to poor health in control. Legumes the body uses the carbohydrates from legumes at a very slow rate. So what it does is it gives you energy for the entire day, or for very long periods of time. So it's not like your body burns off the energy really quick. When you're eating beans, I'm from northern New Mexico. I grew up on beans in Chile. That's what we ate. I grew up next to Oaxaca Pueblo, which was a Native American pueblo, similar to a reservation, but just a lot smaller. And staple food was beans in Chile. Everywhere I went, to all my friends' houses, we ate tortillas and beans in Chile. It's inexpensive, and the two combinations of those things will keep you healthy, incredibly good for you, and obviously very delicious, very near and dear to my heart, beans in Chile, right? It provides steady energy for the body, brain, and nervous system. Eating more legumes as a part of a healthy diet can help lower blood sugar, blood pressure, heart rate, and other heart disease and diabetes risk. So can't get enough beans. They're very, very good for you. Split peas and peas, yellow split peas, green split peas, all of that category of dried peas is in the same boat. Very, very good for you. Inexpensive. I'll tend to have so much of this stuff stocked up on my shelves at home. I never run out of beans. I never run out of lentils. Never run out of split peas of any sort. I like split lentils are really good for making dal, things like that, which we're going to make today. So I can't speak highly enough about having legumes and that type of thing in your diet. We can't have a healthy cooking class without talking about kale, right? Kale is one of the most nutrient-dense food sources on the planet. It's dating me a little bit, but there was a time in my professional career when all we did was use kale for garnish. That's all we used it for. And now it's completely different, right? We use it in salads, we use it in stews, we use it in stir fries. We use it just as itself, steamed and served on the It's got more vitamin K in it than any other food on the planet. It's loaded with vitamin A. Again, I'm no dietitian, but spend some time looking up what kale can do for you and the health benefits of that. When it's in season, it's inexpensive, holds up really well in the refrigerator, lasts for a long time in your produce drawer, and it's incredibly delicious and incredibly good for you. That sort of leads into the theme of eating when plants are in season. How am I going to feed myself and eat healthy on a budget? Start learning the plants and the fresh produce that grows in your region wherever you are and when it's available. That leads me to asparagus, right? If you go down to South Hadley right now, every farm has a sign at their driveway, and there's a little farm stand in their driveway that says, South Hadley grass is here. And what they're talking about is all the asparagus that's popped up on all the farms right now. When there's an abundance of something, it's cheap, right? It's all supply and demand. If you've got a ton of local asparagus going on, then they're going to want to get rid of it because it doesn't last very long, so they have a lot of it, so there's going to be a better price on it. As you enter the winter months wherever you live, you're going to have to change your diet a little bit. You're going to have to eat some of those winter vegetables, moving into your winter squashes, your butternut squash, your root vegetables, things like that. Try to base your diet around not having to have tomatoes year-round, having that thought. I mean, obviously, you go to the store and buy a tomato, you're not a bad person. But if you start basing your diet around seasonal vegetables, you'll eat healthier and you'll eat at a much better, it'll be less expensive for you is what I'm trying to say. So always keep that in mind as you're shopping at the grocery store in whatever region you go out to live in after you leave school, learning what those fresh things are that you have. I owe that thought process mainly to my wife. I got to give her credit. I came up, sort of in the culinary world of French cooking and rich foods and braised meats, and I was all about that when I was younger. And then after, my wife has a different view on food. She likes to eat a lot of vegetables. Her dad's a farmer. He farms down in Orange, Massachusetts. So she kind of grew up with a different thought process on food. And when we came together, we started incorporated my idea of what great cooking was and her idea of what great cooking was. And we've become that much better. And I've become a better chef because of her influence. And I eat better. We still eat some really amazing braised dishes and we eat meat, but we tend to eat a more plant-based diet more often than not now. It's better for the planet, it's better for us, and it's better for everybody as far as I'm concerned. So we try to do that as much as possible. Today we're going to make 4 things that are inexpensive, good for you, personal, and just purely make life better in my opinion. First we're going to make a roasted tomato salsa with dried chiles. Talk a little bit about some of those health benefits. I'm going to toast the chiles and then blend it up really quick to show you that process. It's super simple. It's something you can put in the fridge, lasts around 2 weeks in your refrigerator. You can marinate meats, marinate vegetables in it for different roasting and cooking processes. And then obviously spooning some of that onto a burrito or a nice taco is always the best thing in the world, in my opinion. Growing up in New Mexico, you can hear that coming through it. Next, we're going to make the world-famous dal that we serve every single day here in our dining center. You can't get healthier than that. You can't get more delicious than that. And it's very simple and inexpensive to make. You add that to a brown rice, and you've got a superfood right there in front of you that's going to fuel you, keep you healthy, and then you can make big batches of dal and put it in the freezer and pull it as you need it. Those kinds of concepts are things that I want to talk about today. Being able to make big batches of things, put it in your freezer so that it doesn't go bad, and then you pull it out as you need it. Those are the smart things that you got to do if you want to eat healthy on a budget. Then the last thing we're going to make a hummus, a basic hummus out of chickpeas. The fun thing about that is there's a million things you can do with that. It's incredibly good for you. You can dip hummus, you can dip pita bread in it, you can dip veggies in it, you can dip pita chips in it. You can put it in wraps, you can make sandwiches out of it. You can put it on platters if you have friends coming over. All kinds of cool things you can do with hummus. And you can put about 1 million different ingredients in it and customize it to whatever flavor profile you like. We'll cover a little bit of that today. And then finally, we're going to do a little vinaigrette. We're going to make a salad dressing today. I call it a shaker vinaigrette because you can put all the ingredients in a mason jar, and your emulsification process, where your combining of the 2 liquids, takes place right in the jar. It's super simple. Then you just throw it in your fridge. You store it that way. Pour it on whatever you need it for, and keep it in your refrigerator. So those are the 4 things that we're going to do today. I think I already explained the meaning of the platter in front of you. I'll try to remember to let you know when to smell things or when to taste things if you're willing. You don't have to taste it if you don't want to. If you want to taste it and you're feeling adventurous, go ahead. And any questions that you have during the process, feel free to slow me down and raise your hand or get my attention somehow. If you have a question, I'll do my best to answer it. So here we go. I'm going to get started. The first thing we're going to do today is the salsa. I'm going to be using chile de árbol and chile guajillo as my spiciness. And I'm going to show you how to dry toast those chiles, and also how to roast your tomatoes, your onions, your garlic, and how to get all of that into your blender and make your salsa. You can see me pretty well up there on what I'm doing. So I'm just going to start grabbing my tomatoes. I think my pan's heated up enough here on my induction burner. So the recipe you have in front of you, salsa de chile de árbol. First line I put was feel free to change out any of the dried chiles to create different flavor profiles and heat levels. So if you go to a grocery store, you'll see that section that has all the dried chiles in it. Grab a bag of a couple different things and experiment with it, right? Just see what happens. Be careful when you're doing it, right? You don't want to burn your face off. So we have a couple of tomatoes here that we're gonna follow the recipe for each. The chile de árbol is a classic, like Mexico City, Chile. I mean, it's used all around Mexico. But if you go to any taqueria in Mexico City, you're going to get a salsa that has chile de árbol. It's really, really good. It's really good for you. Adds a great spiciness to salsa. Dried chiles are incredibly good for your digestive system. Chiles in general are. It's sort of a misconception. Oh, chiles are going to give you heartburn. They're bad for your digestive tract. It's actually just the opposite. Chiles work against your acidic properties in your digestive system and actually calm them down. Obviously, if you overdo it like me, you might have an issue. But if you're adding chile into your diet on a fair amount, not overdoing it, then it's always good for you. Everything in the right amount, right? So it's calling for 4 chile de árbol. And again, I'm just dry toasting them. I'm not putting any oil. I'm not doing anything. I'm just putting them right in the pan. I've got a fan blowing here for 2 reasons. I want you guys to smell what I'm doing, and there's a fire sprinkler right above me. And I didn't want us to get wet, so I'm keeping that close to the smoke away from here and keeps us all dry. The recipe that I gave you on your recipe packet calls for 4 chile guajillo. I only have 3. Should I run to the store and buy more chile guajillo? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I can get by with just 3 chiles, a little less spicy this time. Or maybe I look around in my pantry and I find some other dried chiles. I have here a Chile Morita, which is basically a dried smoked jalapeno. Very similar to a chipotle, but it's not in the adobo sauce, the wet ones that you're used to seeing. I'm going to throw one of those in because I found it in my pantry, right? This healthy cooking on a budget. You got to figure out how to overcome the situation. Get creative. Use everything in your kitchen. Use everything in your pantry. That's the sign of a really good cook. We've got some masters here, including Master Chef Cumin, who works over at the Walk. I'm sure you're all familiar with him and his food. An incredibly talented chef. He does things that shock me all the time. I'm always impressed, and I'm always he's the best at figuring out ways to substitute things and use things and reuse things. He's just amazing. But that's a sign of an accomplished chef or an accomplished cook, is being able to understand flavors. And again, it's about being adventurous, right? It's about having fun. It's about trying new things. You're going to fail. You're going to make things that are horrible tasting. I do it. I still do it to this day. Even with all my years of experience. So don't feel bad. Just pick yourself up, keep going. And that's how you're going to get really good at cooking. So this doesn't take too long when you're dry toasting the chiles. You certainly don't want them to get black on either side. I don't know if you guys can smell them over there. I'm starting to smell them a little bit here. There's a wonderful smell coming off of there. I'm going to go ahead and kick that off and just let them dry while I test the process. Cool gadget to have in your kitchen. It's called a tomato shark. It's just used for coring out the tomato and not losing much of your product, right? So you've got everything else that you can use. So I'll take the core out, flip it over to the other side, and just very gently core the tomato. You don't want to cut too much of the flesh. You really just want to cut the skin, and that's it. Make an X is basically what you're doing. I had a half sheet pan here. No matter. So you'll put that on your sheet pan. And then you're going to want some onion. Just take a tiny bit of the front of that onion off, which allows you to cut it in half. Take the least amount of peeling that you can off without wasting any onion. I call it root to stem and nose to tail. Anything you're using, you want to be budget conscious, you got to use it all. You unnecessarily throw things away, good for the planet, not good for the pocketbook, and it's not good for you. So now we've got our half onion. The way that, in this case, we're not needing to dice it or anything. So what I'll usually do is just take it, maybe cut it into 4 pieces, leave it in that part. That's all going to go on a sheet pan, go in your oven, just like it gives you the directions here on your recipe. What you're going to end up with, this is the magic process of cooking on TV, right? That's going to go in your oven, 375. I think I put 12 to 14 minutes, 20 minutes here. Again, just kind of keep an eye on it as it's roasting. You want a nice caramelized color on there. Your onions are going to get a little brown. What that brownness is the natural sugars in the onion caramelizing. That's going to give it great flavor, give it some sweetness. When you have the garlic in its little husk like this, when it comes out of the oven, it's going to be a nice dark brown, light brown, I should say. It'll come right out of that really easy. So that's going to go into our blender. Onions are going to go right into our blender. And now you'll see the purpose of that X that I scored on the tomato. It just makes it easy to peel the way around. You're losing a little bit of juice out of that tomato. You don't want to try to recapture that. Can you guys see what I'm doing okay? Up there? Cool. It worked, Jamie. Get that off. Now, there's nothing you can do with the peelings there. A lot of people will see that and think, okay, it's going to go into the sink to wash. Don't ever do that. This brown area that's on the pan, in the French term, is called fond. Fond is concentration of flavor. There is a ton of natural sugar in that brown part right on the pan. Obviously, if it's black and burned, there's a difference. But this brown part that's on the pan, see that liquid that's forming now at the bottom of the pan after I scraped right there? That brown liquid? That is gold right there. Do not waste it. Make sure you get every little bit of that liquid. You can even go as far as putting a little bit of water on the pan and then putting it right back on the burner. That heat and water will get that off of the pan, help bring a little bit more of that off, and then you can add it in and add even more flavor to whatever you're cooking. That's the same if you get some of that in the bottom of a saute pan and you're cooking something. Make sure you get all that fond back up off the bottom of the saute pan. If you're searing a chicken breast or something, you'll get those little crispy pieces of brown, super brown chicken on the bottom. All that stuff's divine. Make sure you get it. So now we have our tomatoes, our onions, our garlic. Now we're going to want to do our dried chiles. You can de-seed them a little bit, pop the top off and take some of the seeds out if you want to reduce the heat or control the heat. Have more of the chile flavor without having all of the heat, because the majority of the heat out of the chile is in the seed and it's capsaicin is what it's called. It's what gives chile pepper its what gives the chile pepper its heat. I should just say chile. Pepper is a misconception. We started using the word pepper because when the Europeans arrived in the Americas, the Native Americans shared their chiles with them. The Europeans had never tasted anything like that. They had never tasted a chile before. The only thing they had to compare it to was a black peppercorn. So they started calling them peppers. They are chiles. Within the chile is what gives it its heat. But there's also a load of health benefits in capsaicin. It's good for your circulatory system. It's good for your digestive health. A lot of things that it's good for. If you're interested in learning more about that, certainly look it up. Don't just Google it. You'll get a ton of information on it. Any of these little points that I'm bringing up that you don't feel like I'm covering enough, feel free to ask questions. Also look it up. Dive in a little bit and start learning a little bit more about it. So now we have our chiles, we have our tomatoes, our onions, our garlic. I always have to use a little pinch of salt, right? Not too much. I like to put a little bit of black pepper. You can go lime juice at this point. A lot of people lime juice. You could do cilantro in there. You can have to chop the cilantro. You could put just whole stems. Cilantro is delicious from the front to the back. People take the leaves off cilantro and it drives me nuts. You want to use it all. It's all delicious. It's all good for you. It's all usable. But I like to keep it simple like this when I'm doing my salsas because I like to add cilantro and other things in another part of it. Like if I'm doing a burrito, then I like to put a ton of cilantro in the burrito. And then that just leaves my salsa more basic and I can use it for other things. Let me just hit that on a quick If you like it chunky, don't puree it as far. I, for one, just like to puree mine all day. Oh man, that looks awesome. This bowl's a little too big for the recipe we did, but I didn't know what it was going to come out as. Again, always utilizing everything you have, right? I have to remind my cook, but I have to remind the cooks in dining services all the time. They get too busy. They throw that blender, and I find it at the dish station, and it drives me crazy. What's this? This is all good, usable stuff. I don't know how well you can see it. That's our simple, right? Super simple. You can make it as spicy or unspicy as you like. You can add different chile to make it taste the way that you like. You can use it in a lot of things. You could marinate chicken to be cooked or baked. You can obviously use it in the traditional condiment style where you add it to tacos or burritos or anything that you want to make there, fajitas. Just a really versatile, delicious thing. It'll last like 2 weeks in your fridge easily. If it turns into champagne, you know it's bad. If it's bubbling, if you take it out of the fridge and you don't move it and there's bubbles going, that means there's chemical reactions happening within it. You know that it's bad, right? But you can get a solid 2 weeks out of any roasted tomato salsa as long as your refrigerator is working right. I'll put that right back here. Next thing we're going to dive into, I'm hoping you're excited about, is our dal that we make here. They've been making it since long before I got here. I can't take any credit for it. It's a wonderful recipe. I have adopted it into my diet. I eat it at home. I make big batches of it to put it in the freezer. My wife loves it. The kids aren't quite there yet. We can make it pretty spicy. So unfortunately, they're not into it. I swear one of these days I'm going to make my daughter I'm hoping my daughter likes spicy food so we can share that experience together. But right now, she thinks I'm crazy. She doesn't understand why I eat chile with everything. But she didn't grow up in the Southwest, right? So I'm going to get this induction burner going. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to toast some spices. I hope that you can smell the process of the toasting spices. And again, I hope it doesn't set the fire alarm off. So part of the process is simmering lentils in water, and I didn't want to go through that because it's very, very basic. You're going to put your lentils in a pot. You're going to fill it with cold water. Take your finger. This is amazing. I don't know why it works, but it's amazing trick. This works with rice too. So the first bend in your finger, your first knuckle, put the water that high over it in whatever vessel it's in. It doesn't matter how wide or how short, stout it is. So one first bend in your finger, a pinch of salt, and simmer it really low, and generally that's going to be the perfect amount of liquid. You might have to adjust a tiny bit. Depends on how high the higher the burner's going, the more you're going to evaporate that water off, and it's not going to have the chance to cook it. So cooking on high is not always the best. If you want to really control your heat when you're cooking to the right intensity that you need it. When you're sauteing something, heat low, then you get burn all the way out. If you're just doing other things, then sometimes you need to lower your heat. So that's why cooking with gas is so much better.
About how long does it take? I know it's so much easier to add like beans and they're quicker, but they also have like added salt and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, they basically pack up the salt water, and that's what allows them to last for a millennia in that can. So every bean is different. Every bean cooks at a different time span. A lot of people believe in soaking beans overnight. That's going to save you time. In my opinion, you don't get the bean gravy, right? So when I'm making pinto beans at home, it might take me 2 hours to simmer them when I'm making pinto beans. But then when you're done, you're going to have this brown gravy that carries with that bean. And for me, when you soak them overnight, they take on a bunch of butter, but something doesn't happen in that cooking process that allows them to create that gravy, and it's delicious. Everywhere I went when I was a kid, I would go to my friend's house, and like I said, beans in Chile was a staple, right? And the beans were always so good. I mean, I could just eat gobs of them. Of course, when you were full as full, Abuelita would always bring some more, and then, I don't want any more, but didn't have a choice. You always had more, one more tortilla, a little bit more chile, you always had some more. And so when I got into my cooking career and I started making beans, I was always adding chicken stock and onions and garlic and ham hocks, and I was always trying to make them taste good. They never were the same. They were never, ever, ever the same. I think I was in a hurry one day, and I threw some beans on the stove with some water and a pinch of salt, and I cooked them. They were the best beans I had made in so long, and it's because of simplicity. Sometimes overdoing it is not what you want. You don't want to add a ton of things. When I make a batch of pinto beans, I put pinto beans, water, a little salt, a little ground pepper, maybe a dash of cumin if I've got time, but that's it. Let those simmer up, and that's the most delicious thing in the world to me. It's just the bean flavor on its own. Of course, when you're doing soups and different things, you might want to spice them up or do them different, but for a basic pot of beans, always just stick with the basics. So when I did these lentils, again, you just gotta kind of watch them. You'll get an idea of what you're cooking. These split lentils cook fairly fast. You're talking simmer for 15 to 20 minutes, and they're done. They're nice and mushy. And that's what you want to do. You want them to end up looking like a little bit of a paste, right? These were cooked down. I cooked them yesterday to save some time. But literally, when you're making the dal, you're not trying to keep them as individual split lentils. You're really cooking them down enough to where it sort of turns to a paste. So that's the first thing you'll get going. And then you'll do your spices. I have a little bit of oil in my pan here. The first thing we're going to do is just the spices. So if you want to smell something, there's 2 yellow spices on your platters. The one that's more orange is your turmeric. It's a little bit more orange. Feel free to take your mask down for a second and just smell that. Again, you can get a real hint of what that is, right? If you can see what's going on in my pan here. See how the oil's bubbling a little bit, but not furiously? That's what you want. Next is ground cumin. There's 2 brown spices in your tray right there. The cumin is the darker brown. The coriander is the lighter brown. So just smell the cumin. You're going to add that into your pan. Next is your ground coriander, which is the second brown spice. I was almost going to label these, and then I was like, I don't have time for that. I'll just try to explain it. I thought it was fairly easy. Coriander, do you know what coriander is? It's when cilantro grows too far. When it bolts. When cilantro bolts, that top flowering, that's what coriander is.
That's why British people call it coriander.
What's that?
I said, is that why British people call it coriander?
Probably, yeah. I was unaware of that, but yes. So what ends up sort of happening here is a little bit of a paste. Starts making the more I add, the more paste you get. And if the paste gets too thick, you can add a little bit of oil to keep it a little bit fluid. So we did the coriander, the crushed red pepper. Feel free to smell that. Don't smell it too closely. That one's got an awesome smell to it. Kosher salt. Put a little bit of that in. Now your curry powder. Your curry powder is your other yellow one, the one that was a little brighter yellow. Make sure you smell that. That's got an awesome smell to it. And all these aromatics are being blended together. And when you go through the toasting process, it's really going to meld all of them together. And that's the foundation for the dal. Cinnamon stick. If you don't have cinnamon stick at home, it's a good idea to keep some cinnamon sticks in your pantry. There's the key to healthy eating on a budget, right? Get a pantry stocked with spices. That gives you the ability to make a lot of different flavors and do a lot of things. And spices will last a fair amount of time on the shelf. They will lose their effectiveness over time. You can't have a jar of dill on the counter for 15 years and expect it to taste good. Some people wonder why their dill is like light green, you know? So we don't need a full cinnamon stick for this, so I'm going to put about a half cinnamon stick in there. I didn't give you cinnamon stick, so you're going to have to trust me on that one. Then the ground mustard, you didn't get any of that either. I didn't think that one was that aromatic. The sambal chili paste is the Chile paste that you have here. You can do it as a shooter. See, everybody else that didn't come to this class, they're going to regret it because we're doing shots. You don't have to tell them it was sambal, but you can say we did shots. Everybody's going to be like, man, I should have signed up. You know what I mean? So, all right, so some sambal. Taste it. If you don't mind spiciness, it's sort of a vinegary, spicy flavor. You can use your little spoon or you can do a little taste. Sambal is used in a lot of different styles of cooking, a lot of Southeast Asian cooking. Sambal is widely used. Again, that's another chili pepper that's got a lot of flavor. So, turn this down a tiny bit. You guys smell that at all? Yeah. I haven't set anything up yet, so we're looking good here. I'm going to do mine. I don't want that too high. You want to do this really slow. This process takes a long time. See how it's kind of red? I don't know if you can tell. It's really red from that sambal that I just put in there. We've got all the spices in for now. So I'm going to let this just roll. And we're going to move on to something else while this cooks. That's the first step you're going to take. And again, this is a long process. We'll shorten it up a little bit today, just for the sake of the course. But take your time on this one. Do some chores around the house while it's going. Get it nice and low, just so it's, the oil is bubbling just a little bit. You're going to want to come by it every minute or two, give it a little stir. Again, you can add a little bit of oil as you need it, just to keep it really has a taste. If it gets too dry, then it's not fluid enough to spread along the pan, and then it doesn't cook even. So as that's going, clean up here a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and change my gloves because I've been handling a lot of things. Make sure that we're being sanitary here. I'm just drying my hand off. I know it looks weird, but it won't go back in the glove unless I get it dried off. So I think what we'll make next is our hummus. Hummus is incredibly good for you. It's got a ton of different uses. Really easy to make. You go to the store and you see hummus on the shelf, and it's $5 for a little container. You can make a big, huge batch at home for much less money than that. These gloves are fighting me. I should have got the powdered glove. I just hate the powdered glove because then you powder over you. That's all right. We'll make it work. So on the recipe card that I gave you, you'll see the recipe there for a basic hummus, or traditional hummus is what I called it. Chickpeas you're going to want to use. This one's calling for 12 ounces of drained chickpeas. You can buy that can, but that's a good one to buy can. You can buy dried chickpeas and then boil them yourself. For this presentation, I would suggest getting the garbanzo beans. The can of garbanzo beans for about 99 cents. And you can use it in soups and stews and different things, and then also to make hummus. I'd say that's about 12 ounces there. Tahini paste, that one's on your tray. Tahini is basically roasted, hulled, and ground sesame seeds is what tahini is. Tahini is used in a ton of Indian cooking, and it's very bitter. It's on the bitter spectrum of things, flavors. Some people like their hummus really bitter. They add a lot of tahini. I particularly like the lemon and garlic aspect of hummus more than I like the really bitter. So I tend to put a little bit less tahini than maybe most people would. Again, tahini is very good for you. Sesame, the roasted and hulled and ground sesame seeds are really good for you. A lot of health benefits there. If you're interested in how that works, definitely look that up a little bit more. I'll sort of go pretty light on my tahini. When you get tahini, you want to make sure it's stirred up really well because the natural oils will separate from the pureed sesame seed. So you'll want to stir it up really good when you get it. You can put a jar in your fridge and it's like invincible. It'll last forever. It's one of those ingredients you can have that's never going to go bad. It'll sit in your fridge literally for months and months and months, and it'll be just fine. So we've got a little bit of tahini. Extra virgin olive oil, that's one of the oils you have there. I'll tend to use, here's the benefit of making your own hummus. The hummus you buy in the store is going to have way more water as it's liquid than it is going to have oil. The food companies have demonized oils over the years, saying that it's going to make, they make you fat, it's going to make you gain weight, that type of thing. Not necessarily. There's a lot of health benefits, especially in quality oil like extra virgin olive oil. What I did today is I used a blend. This is 51% olive oil, 49% canola oil. And so that's a health conscious. Goodbye. Thank you for joining us. Have a great afternoon. That's a health conscious and budgetary decision, right? So it's going to be a little less money for you, but it's still going to get some of the health properties of that olive oil. I'm actually going to add that as we blend it. Lemon juice. Squeeze some fresh lemon juice in there. One quick way to do lemon juice is, if you don't want the seeds, is just squeeze it through your fingers. Acts as a little strainer, so you don't have to dirty another dish. Be your little strainer right there. A little bit of minced garlic. Just peel that fresh garlic and then mince it up. When you chop garlic, when you're mincing something up like that, the finer you chop it, the more surface area you're going to create, which is more flavor. The finer you chop it, the more flavor you're going to get out of it. Then a pinch of salt. What time is it?
6:59.
We've been going for almost an hour. We're not too off. You guys okay with staying? It's scheduled at 6 to 7. You okay with staying just a little bit later? Good. I hope that you do. Put our lid on there. Good. I'm just going to add my oil slowly. Let it blend a little bit. Just a little bit of water. So, on these spices, it's getting real nice and almost looks like milk chocolate now from those spices going around. So we're going to dice some onion here in just a second to keep that process going along. I want to make sure to get all of that garlic off the edge that didn't get pureed. We'll do that one more time real quick. First run, you always want to make it a little bit looser, waterier than what you want it to end up as, because as it cools in your refrigerator, it's going to tighten up a little bit. I went a little too loose on this, but again, it's going to tighten up real nice in the refrigerator, and then you have a basic hummus that you can use for anything you want. So the reason I wanted to talk about hummus, one of the reasons is, and I wrote it here on the recipe that you guys are going to take with you. There's a ton of things you can do with it. You can add some roasted red peppers. in that process, and now you have a roasted red pepper hummus. When you do that, you want to back off on a little bit of your liquid, right? So you might not put any water, a little less oil. Your roasted red pepper is loaded with juices, so that's going to take the place of that. You could do roasted garlic, roasted jalapenos. I wonder how that got in there. I'm not really sure how that suggestion got in there. Roasted pureed beets, cilantro and lime, balsamic vinegar and artichoke hearts, sun-dried tomatoes, pine nuts. It's an endless amount of things that you can put in hummus and customize the flavor. You have a nice big batch in your fridge. Hummus does freeze pretty well too. You throw it in the freezer and use it in a million different ways. So real quick, I'm going to dice an onion, and I'm going to show you the proper way to dice an onion. Really quick, I hope you can see it on the screen, if not over here. Hold the top of the onion, and then you just take your blade and slice through the onion about 90% of the way, 90% of the way, 90% of the way, and 90% of the way. Now it's holding itself together for you. Now you go vertically down the onion, and this is a thick blade, so it makes it a little bit harder. But you go 90% of the way down the onion, and now it's holding itself together for you. Then with that same technique, with your thumb behind your fingers, quick dice on an onion, and it comes out really beautiful. I'll be dicing onions looking at my wife, and she's always like,
for avoiding like an oniony or garlicky cutting board, because I hate like when I put my fruit on like the cutting board and then it tastes like garlic or something.
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
yeah, it's again, that's a hard one to fight. You want to just make sure you wash it really thoroughly with soap and water. That's your best defense. I know I cut some habaneros once and then cut watermelon, and we were like, how is this possible? It was so spicy. And then we finally traced my steps back and we realized, oh, that makes sense. We're like, how did they grow this? We were all amazed. Because the same thing, I did it right after that. All right, now while those are caramelizing, I want to let those cook for a while. We're going to knock out our shaker vinaigrette really quick. This is a cool one because it's really, really easy to make. And then you can throw it in your fridge, store it there. Vinaigrette's invincible. You can put it in the refrigerator. It'll never go bad. It's got a lot of good things for you. Vinegar is great for your gut. There's probiotics in that. Adds to your bacteria. Your microbiome there's a lot of new research coming out that really makes it clear that the number one killer on this planet is poor diet. You might call it diabetes, you might call it cancer, you might call it hypertension, you might call it all these different things, but it leads back to a poor diet. For years and years and years and years, the school of thought was, it's all hereditary. If your grandpa has cancer, then you're going to get cancer. There's a high probability that you'll get cancer. There is truth to some of that. But they're learning now that your microbiome has an incredible influence on the health of your life, the longevity of your life, and the things that you may get, the diseases that you may contract during the course of your life. The microbiome is essentially all of the bacteria and fungi that live within your digestive system. There are more bacteria in your digestive system than you have cells. So that kind of blows my mind in a way, right? There's more bacteria in me than there is me. Like we're a host to this, and we're learning a lot about it. A plant-based diet is what's going to help fuel that microbiome and keep it healthy. There's a lot of things you can do on top of that, like probiotics. Yogurt has live cultures. Everybody likes, what's the popular drink now with the live cultures in it? I drink it at home. Kombucha is so good. It's so delicious. And there's a ton of stuff that's good for your microbiome in there. Legumes have a lot for your microbiome. So any plant-based diet is going to help fuel that. But it's definitely something to keep in mind. Vinegars are one of those things that adds to the microbiome. So we have a 1/4 cup. This one's easy because you just throw everything in. 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar. Now, the standard on vinaigrettes is 3 to 1. 3 parts oil to 1 part vinegar. But that's up to you. That's the beauty of cooking, right? If you like your vinaigrettes a little bit more subdued, a little bit more mild, then put a little bit more oil. If you like them more zingy and more flavor up front, like that sort of intense vinegar flavor, then you want to put less oil or more vinegar, however you want to balance it out. I particularly like my vinegars to have a real good punch to them, be really zingy. My wife, and I like them to be a little bit sweet. My wife likes them just the opposite. So that's always a challenge for us, right? So we're going to put, I'm going to do more of a 2 to 1, I think, on mine for demonstration purposes today, because that's how I like mine. Plus, that's not all the oil I have, so that's worked out pretty well. We're going to mince a little piece of shallot here. Lost my shallot. We're going to do ginger since I don't have any shallot.
Wait, it's right up there.
Is it? Is it hiding from me?
Oh, it's on the table.
Oh, there it is where I put it. Thank you. So just like an onion, we're going to do this the same way. Shallot's a little bittersweet onion, loaded with flavor. Be careful. If you use too much shallot, it can end up tasting a little bit like soap. It's weird. Yeah. So just be conscientious. Use a little less than you think you might need. It's very, very powerful flavor. Put that minced shallot in there. Chop time. Herbs are an incredible way to flavor things. Loaded with good stuff for you. And loaded with flavor, and it's not adding salt or sugar. Your savory items, your garlic, your ginger. That's the cool thing about a dressing like this is you can add whatever you want. You could use garlic scapes. You could use all the different herbs, fresh basil, fresh rosemary, fresh thyme, fresh oregano. And you can use different vinegars. You could use red wine vinegar. You could use white wine vinegar, champagne vinegar. You could use rice wine vinegar. You could use rice wine vinegar and do a soy-based vinaigrette with like soy sauce. You could use sesame oil if you wanted to go the Asian route and make an Asian vinaigrette. Putting that fresh herb in there. Now on the recipe that I gave you, it says Dijon mustard. But I didn't have any Dijon mustard in the fridge today. So I grabbed a whole grain mustard, and that's one of the things on your, the fresh thyme is on your platter. Feel free to taste that, smell it. The Dijon, this is whole grain mustard, which is really cool stuff because the mustard, the little spears you see there, that's actually the mustard seed. And they pop in your mouth when you eat them. They're loaded with flavor, and it adds another complexity to the vinaigrette, right? It adds a mouthfeel to it when you're eating your salad that you tossed it in. You got those little tiny seeds that you're cracking in between your teeth, and they're awesome. Mustard is an emulsifying agent. So when you're making a vinaigrette, you're making an emulsification, right? And this is where my nerdy chef geek side comes out. It's the science side of cooking, right? So an emulsification is essentially when you're suspending one molecule inside of another. You're combining liquid and oil, which, they always say, gas and water don't mix. Well, oil and vinegar don't like to mix either, but adding that mustard it helps them to want to combine together. It's a high acidity level. It wants to bring those two together. There's a way of emulsifying it properly with a whisk. There's a way of doing it with a blender. The shaker vinaigrette is just cool because it's simple and you can throw it right in your fridge. I do like to add a little sweetness, so I like to add a little bit of pure maple syrup. Instead of just adding sugar, I'm going to use honey. I'm going to use maple syrup. I'm going to use agave syrup. There's all benefits, health benefits to those items above and beyond what sugar is going to give you. Sugar tastes great, but there's not a lot of health benefits on it. Tons of vitamins in this. There's potassium in it. And there's all kinds of good things for your body when you're using it, especially around here. How can you not use maple syrup? You're in New England. That's just nuts. Crazy, but always want to do a dash of salt. Salt brings out flavor no matter what. I like a little bit of black pepper in mine. That's it. Don't forget about this. You're multitasking. Now you're just going to have to work out a little bit. Dance or whatever you're doing. vacuum at the same time. Get all kinds of things done while you're doing this. You're going to shake it really vigorously, and that's what's going to encourage the two liquids to incorporate into each other. And now you have a nice vinaigrette. Fresh herbs, tons of loaded good stuff for you. And again, a million different things you can do with that. You can marinate vegetables before you roast them. You can marinate chicken. You can pour it on salads. It's not just a salad dressing. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. Olive oil is fluid at room temperature, but it will congeal or solidify when it gets cool. So what you'll see is you'll see a layer of fat, which is your oil, and then you'll see a layer of vinegar when you pull it out of the refrigerator. Just pull it out about 10 minutes before you need it. Let it start coming down to room temperature, and then just shake it, you know what, out of it. And it'll come right back together. It'll actually re-emulsify for you. We've done our caramelized our onions. We've been toasting our spices here, I don't know, about 15 minutes or so, maybe 20 minutes. One of the last steps is adding some canned diced tomatoes. That liquid from those tomatoes is going to help bring up that char, bring some of that stuff back up off the pan. And, you know, in any normal application, you could probably stir that around for a little while. Let it simmer a little bit. Let some of that tomato juice reduce down a little bit. I added just a tiny bit of water, again, to get it moving. For the sake of time in tonight's course, we're going to skip that step. And we're going to go straight to adding our coconut milk. It's another one on your tray. Feel free to taste it. Coconut milk's really good. If you have a tree nut allergy, obviously don't go there. Now you get sort of a soupy texture to your toasted spices and your oil and your caramelized onions. What do you think? It's not that sweet, but there's a little hint of sweetness, right? And it's all natural coconut sweetness, right? No sugar added. Now we take our dal, nice and cooked down lentils. See that okay on the camera, how it's all starting to come together? And it's got a nice dark color to it. Those red lentils sort of turn orange, and the tomatoes and all those toasted spices come together. And you really don't need to cook it any further. It's done at this point. If it's too watery, then maybe you'll want to simmer it for a minute or two. Let some of that moisture evaporate out of the lentils and the mixture. You know, for me, this is just right. I mean, that's just right. Again, as you cool it and then reheat it, it will thicken a little bit. So I tend to go a little bit loose on stuff that I know I'm going to be putting in the refrigerator to be eating for that week. Take a nice big container, make a triple batch of that. Now you have enough to eat for the week, and then you get a couple containers in the freezer, and then 2 weeks later, when you're like, I'm out of time, what do I do? You know, I'm late for work, whatever it is, pull one of those out in the morning, and then when you get home from work, it'll be ready for you. All you got to do is cook up some rice, cook up some basmati rice, and then have that with those two things, with maybe some roasted vegetables on the side that you just do up in the oven, and you've got a incredibly healthy, delicious meal. I think that covers everything. I was going to plate that up, but I think it kind of looks cool in there. Won't dirty the dish. I think we went through everything that I planned on discussing. Does anybody have any questions on anything? I hope that you come away with this with a little inspiration more than anything. There's the recipe cards for you to take with you in your graduation little memoir box. Pull it out one day and, I remember this crazy guy up there making all that stuff for us. And again, congratulations on graduation this year. It's quite the achievement. And just remember, cooking is something that you'll do for the rest of your life. Just have fun with it, be adventurous, be open to new things, and you'll find that it makes life better. The more you know how to cook, the more you know how to enjoy food, the healthier you'll be and happier you'll be. Thank you all very much.